Welcome back to Edinburgh for our latest episode of Box 2 in partnership with Best Western Hotels GB, supporting local, proudly independent hotels. Welcome back to Box 2 for this, another weekly roundup in partnership with Best Western Hotels GB. I'm Jim Jones-Buchanan and I'm joined this week by Leeds Rhinos head coach Rohan Smith. Rohan, great to have you on. I don't know how many Box 2s you might have watched, but it's great to be able to have a chat. A great weekend, certainly for Lois Fortel and her team as well, getting to Wembley, the first women's team to make it in the Challenge Cup final at Wembley. Great for the club, isn't it?
Yeah, well, firstly, I've watched all the Box 2s and I've enjoyed them. You always find out stuff about people that you're not otherwise aware of in this type of format, which is it's really good. Yeah, for Lois does a great job. She's super passionate about growing the game in its entirety, not just the Rhinos first team women's. So it's great to see that reward for Lois and the squad. Wembley's an unbelievably special place to get to, and it doesn't matter how you get there. The opportunity is something that everyone in this country particularly dreams of.
In the last 12 months as well, it's really been impressed upon me, having been here for so long, this one team Rhinos mantra. And some of my favourite moments, Rohan, is down at Kirksall Training Ground when you've been running coaching sessions. Is that certainly on the 3G pitch, there's not a blade of grass that's not covered by a men's team player, women's team, one of our academy players learning physical disability. I think that holistic approach to the one club mentality and the coaching, pedagogy, teaching that you like to give upon them is really prevalent. It seems to mean a lot to you.
Yeah, it does. I think, in professional sports, everyone gets caught up in the results, and that's super important, no doubt. But we're a club. We're not just a first team, and we're also not just a first team in an academy that are aspiring to be a first team. We're a club that's made up of many different parts with different sports and different modes of the same sport with the wheelchair stuff as well. So I think it's really important to bring the teams together to feel like a club, not just wear the same badge, but actually interact and build connections and relationships. And it's been great to see some of those periods where we've crossed paths and spent time together, actually forging relationships and connections between the grades. So it's a unique club, this one, in that regard. So it's certainly bigger than just first team results on a Friday night. But it's a privilege and inspiring to be seeing so many people trying to play our great game.
And the netball as well, I love it. You mentioned different sports. It's great, and you are a student of sport as far as I can see. You're extremely well read. You're always sending around books on learning, and a lot of the context around them seems to be on the vehicle of sport, such as basketball, NBA, even baseball. It seems something that's you're passionate about. And I just wanted to jump back into rugby league, and what's stood out to me as somebody being objective this season is how condensed the league is, and there seems to be some sort of mechanics around that as to why, certainly above the bottom three, anybody can beat anybody on the day. We've seen 2 Challenge Cup surprises in inverted commas, probably not a surprise to you. But it is entertaining. It's as good as it's ever been for me. And I just wondered, have you got a take as to why the mechanics are like that at the minute and why we're seeing these types of results?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's not something I spend a lot of time thinking about. But I think, in a salary cap sport, that is the idea of the salary cap, is to spread the talent across the teams. I know not all clubs have the same resource in Super League to be able to do that, but I'd be guessing that the spread of or the investment across the competition is probably at its most equal, which maybe is helping to make the competition equal. It's exciting to be part of a competition where you know that you have to play well to give yourself a chance. But I think beyond us inside the clubs, where it's always you live and breathe the day-to-day preparation, and the result is huge. But for the fans and even the neutral follower of the game, a lot of people would have been watching the Challenge Cup on free to air on the weekend, seeing teams that maybe don't have the same profile beating the highest profile teams in our sport. So I think it's great from that regard. The other thing I've thought about previously, probably in my times in and around the NRL, is in the modern game there's a lot of players and coaches moving clubs.
Yep.
So there's no real secrets. There's a lot of transfer of information, either directly or indirectly there with player and coach movement. So I think that helps to balance things out. Coaches move from a successful club to another club and share ideas, and that can bring things closer together. I think there's a few other things that maybe equalise the performances a little bit, but might not go into those just here. It's probably not the format.
But do you reckon it's healthy for the game as well? I mean, I've been watching it forever, or seemingly forever, but I'm enjoying it now as much as I ever have done. It's good for the game. That's exactly what we wanted, isn't it? We've got it. A lot of people are going, oh, what's going on here? But actually, it's a great thing.
Yeah, speaking outside of just Rhinos' interest, is that's what professional sport is about. It's about different teams having success at different times, and that there's a cycle. It's very uncommon in salary cap driven sport for a team to win 4 competitions in a row. Like that's unheard of. So for that to balance out a little bit, and maybe they're still they're still in the running to win. There's no doubt about that. But it's the competitiveness of sport is based on the process and feeling like your process can outdo someone else's.
Yeah.
So anytime that's evident for the duration of the game, we've had so many close games in Super League throughout the competition this year that it makes the spectacle better. The contest is what it's about, and I really don't believe that people want to turn up to a foregone conclusion. I think people actually deep down want to see a tight, hard-fought game. Like there's, in other sports, you watch a Premier League and there's nothing better than a 95th minute injury time winner.
Yeah.
For a memorable game, it's the 4-5-0. Everyone, half the ground's empty by the time the game's finished, and that's not really the deep down competitiveness and spirit of sport, of professional sport.
Yeah, I like what you're saying there about almost the bespoke nature of each team having to outdo each other. And I reckon in the past, and I always talk about this idea that things that have never happened before happen all the time. And there's things happening now that I've not seen before, even in the game. And it looks to me like every week you've almost got to preview the identity of the team that you're playing. You can't just rely on being 9 out of 10 in your own identity anymore, because that won't get you over the line. There are so many little nuances within the opposition that you have to coach really well to be specific to them. And then even then it comes down to some small margins. Would you say there's a lot more in the prep to do now as a coach?
Yeah, there's a balance to that because, we're also dealing with 17 individuals on your team that all need kind of a different level of detail and preparation that you do have to be aware of what the opposition's strengths are. Otherwise, you're putting all your eggs in your own basket, which is, it's the balance between trying to negate the opposition's strengths but playing to your own strengths at the same time. So we provide a lot of detail, and I'm a detail-orientated guy. I had to learn the game from a different perspective because I didn't play at a high level. So my ability to help players is to be able to provide detail to them and giving them the detail to be able to give themselves the best chance of not losing and winning at the same time. Yeah. So getting that balance right between playing to your own identity but being aware of the opposition identity is certainly a key to the way I think coaching should be done.
I remember last year when we used to go to games and we sat in front there and you'd sort of chat and reminisce about some of your memories as a kid, like going to Hull. Obviously your dad spent time over here at Hull and Bradford. And I guess for me, seeing you now as a coach, you've been a career coach, you've had a lot of experience in there. And I wondered what effect your dad had on that. Because I look at my boys, I look 4 boys play rugby league, talk about it most weeks. But the dad side of me almost overrules the player history. To a point where it just becomes about, listen, son, go do your best, enjoy what you're doing. And I doubt how much of an effect I have on my kids as an ex-rugby league player in terms of their development. And I just wondered, you're very much your own guy, your own man, your own ideas. But growing up with Brian Smith, how much of an effect did he have on the motivation in your trajectory in your coaching career?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I remember going to the Boulevard at 7 years old and actually bumped into a few of the players Dad coached back there in '88, not too long ago, and they were talking about me and my brother running around on the field and at training in the whole winter back then. So I guess being around it at that age, you're not aware of. Yeah. You're just sort of following your parents and you're seeing what they get up to, but you're not aware of the influence that it's having. Probably through my early teens and probably all the way up until I left home when I was 21 when I moved out. But through that period, I think I started to be consciously aware of the influence because I was playing footy and then trying to start my coaching as well. And I guess the influence being around and being in the car or being in the dressing room when coaching chat was happening was sort of by osmosis or not actively trying to be a coach at that stage, but just it was a knock-on effect of being around it. It's something I'm conscious of right now as well. I love all sports and cricket being another big one. And my young fella's 8 and he's obsessed by cricket. And the detail of it, and you can watch a whole day of Test cricket on TV without blinking, and wow. Picking up the tendencies and the traits of players, and then going out in the back garden and trying to replicate it. I think without me ever, I never talked to him about wanting to help him with his sport. I'll throw balls or whatever, but I don't. I'm conscious of not being because I'm the sporting coach, not being the sporting dad coach as well. And stepping back, but I think him just being surrounded by coaching from his day one, pretty much. He's gravitating towards that detail and that practice and that I guess that way of life that sport is.
I think that's great, and it really helps hearing you say that because that's what I tried to articulate about me and my kids, just being there to throw them a ball. Point them in a direction, and you think to yourself, you've got to let go of the fact that you might think you know what direction they need to go in, but actually they've got to see that for themselves. There's just no manufacturing it. It'll either happen or it won't. From a young age, I think you coach swimming, you've done all kinds of things. What is it that gives you the satisfaction and gratification when you go home at night? Is it the relationships that you forge? Is it giving that skill, seeing people develop? What is it for you?
Yeah, it's seeing people develop, and right back to my earliest days of coaching, we're teaching sort of 4 to 6 year olds how to swim, 8 or 10 yards, and that was an eye-opening experience trying to get 4 or 5 kids of that age to stay on task for half an hour was a great grounding as a coach. But seeing the kids improve was exciting. Seeing them have fun in some cases, like some of those kids didn't have maybe the best background at times or upbringing or whatever, but they loved their swimming, so seeing them having fun for half an hour there was to be a small part of their growth and development was cool. And then obviously being around all different levels of rugby league for a long time now, seeing people and players develop, and sometimes it could be that they finish a uni degree and that's more success than they've had on the professional stage, but there's lots of ways of being successful, and to play a small part or a big part, depending on who the player is, to help people along their way. That's what I aspire to do. I guess that servant sort of mentality of you're here to help other people, and your family being one, but whatever you do for an occupation, you're trying to provide support, develop people, or provide a service that helps. I guess.
Yeah, I think when you have the chance to fulfil a bit of potential, I talk a lot about this upstairs, it leaves you with that sense of gratitude as well, because you never really be able to pay that back, certainly the mentors, and it is motivating to be able to pay that forward. And I want to ask you about Daniel Anderson, who's prevalent in some of our biggest rivalries with St Helens back in sort of 7, 8 and 9. been doing it tough recently, obviously, but he was a bit of a mentor for you, somebody who give you some early opportunities. Tell me about that relationship with Daniel Anderson and what it means to you.
Oh yeah, sort of I get a bit emotional at times thinking about Daniel now, and probably did. You know, I've been very grateful for what he's done for me. You know, for beyond his accident, I've said thank you a few times, and probably for a professional coach to reach out or to I connected with Daniel when I was still at university, watching upcoming opposition, and just doing a few odds and ends and a bit of that background work that head coach wouldn't have had time for. They only had a small coaching staff at the Warriors at that stage, and that was a bit of an insight into the professional work that sort of required, and I didn't expect anything to come of it. I was pretty much over university. I was just getting through it to get my degree, but this gave me an avenue of learning how to analyse rugby league properly. At the back end of it, the time I'd done 2 years of sort of voluntary work, and I thought I'll start trying to find a coaching job somewhere. Daniel and the New Zealand Rugby League and the Warriors sort of created the way I'd had some funky title, but it was an apprentice coach that helped the young players. Did a lot of video analysis work. We were just transitioning to DVDs back then from VHS, and trying to get the DVD onto a laptop to be able to do some editing and stuff was the very early stages of that. And I was 21, so being the youngest staff member, you had to take charge of the technology. So that was an experience, and I had to learn a lot there. But yeah, for Daniel to give someone with no experience, no coaching experience, that opportunity was unbelievable. And Daniel was a phenomenal coach. Like the way he coached those Warriors teams of the early 2000s, and then the way he did it with St Helens over here, and the style of play and the level of detail. I remember his ability to remember things that happened in the game was phenomenal. Still is. He's got an eye for it. I loved, I used to go Saturdays, used to go around Auckland watching different games. He'd say, go watch this kid and tell me what you think, or give me some feedback on this, because there's that many good kids around the place. He couldn't see them all, but he knew which ones were going to make it, and that pool of players that in the early 2000s there that the Warriors had. Some of them didn't make it at the Warriors, but they bobbed up at other NRL clubs. There were so many players in that time that ended up being NRL players, similar to sort of Parramatta through the back end of the 90s and early 2000s as well. They were providing players for the whole competition, which I really liked that developmental mindset of building a club, and that was my grounding in it. And I'm forever grateful for Daniel's faith and the time he took to give me a go and to help me along the way. And I was disappointed that his time at the Warriors ended earlier than it should have, and we sort of parted ways. But I've never forgotten how much he's done for me and given me the opportunity to travel the world, coaching and being part of rugby league. If it wasn't for him, I probably wouldn't have had that chance. So I've met my wife on that journey, got 3 beautiful kids now. That pretty much comes down to Daniel giving me that chance. So I can't be more grateful.
Love it. The best bit about sport, that vapor trail of influence that everybody leaves behind. Rohan Smith and Daniel Anderson there. You mentioned travelling the world, meeting new people, going on new journeys, creating more memories. Tell me a bit about London and then obviously Bradford, when you had to come to the other side of the world and start to experience that for yourself and really cut your teeth and jump in deep end. What do you remember about those experiences, and how did it help you develop into who you are now?
Yeah, London was a totally bizarre one. I never thought about sort of coming to England at that point. I was 23, but definitely didn't. London was not part of the rugby league fabric, I guess, in my head back then. So I was fortunate when I left the Warriors. There was a couple of weeks of limbo there, and Uncle Tony actually introduced me to Tony Ray, and we had a few phone calls in and amongst Tony being on the tube in London and cutting in and out. So that phone call took a few turns, but yeah, very grateful for Tony to give me that opportunity, such a young bloke, to come to London. And I came in July 2004, and things weren't going great. Tony was looking for some support, and I was keen to do that. They had a very experienced team back then. A lot of players in their last season at London, which was a real challenge. Like guys like strong-minded guys like Jimmy Dimmick, Dennis Moran.
Yeah.
Those type of guys were very experienced, really good players, but they were. I'd gone from spending a lot of time at the Warriors coaching sort of 15 to 21-year-olds to then getting there and having a very experienced team. So it made me sort of sit back and think about how do you connect and support senior players that have been there, done it, know it. So that was a really good experience, and I appreciate a lot of those guys at the Broncos. The players helped me as well to improve my coaching in that time, and ended up having another 2 seasons at the London Broncos, which we underwent a bit of a reshaping of the roster in 2005. It was really cool, and I got to do a lot of recruitment work and a lot of scouting and sort of support some decision making for Tony there. And then we had a good 2005, and it gave me a really good grounding, I think, for the English game. And then 10 years later, I got the opportunity to come back to Bradford. So first came to Bradford in '96 when Dad was the coach, started Super League, and then 10 years later almost I had my first time in London, and then another 10 years later I came to Bradford, and that was a good experience as a coach. Like, I left a good job, very good job at the Gold Coast Titans mid-season to take on that head coaching role, and cost me, in the end, after Bradford went into administration, I didn't have a job. It cost me a lot of money to do that, to make that decision. But for sort of an 8-month internship, on-the-job internship, to see all the highs and lows that go with a professional sports club, which we had some really good times. We shifted the roster. We changed a lot of stuff, but in the end, we had some disappointing defeats. We had administration, like, to put all of that into 8 months. That you can't put a value. You can't put a value on that as a coach and development. Like, that's the best thing that ever happened to my coaching, was to experience all of that in such a condensed period of time. And then having a few months of no job after that was a chance to reflect and go, is this the business that you want to be in? And I'd say, aside from a day or two here or there, 100%, like, the pain or the disappointment is worth going through some of that to be part of a great game.
Love it. Love that. Got to have a bit of adversity there to find the success. Galvanising. Just wondered, like, when you came over, Owen, you used to send a lot of books out. We've got a bit of a book group there. And I love it. I like to listen to audio books when I'm running, and it takes what it takes. It was one that I remember, and I think Bill Walsh, an author that you like and inspired by. Who would be some of the best mentors or inspirations for you? And I don't know that it's a bit of a mosaic, by the way, but if there was 1 or 2 people that really give you some inspiration and some foresight, who would it be?
I think mentors can come in all sorts of shapes and sizes, and especially the access to people and to things on social media. Like, during that COVID period, I connected with some unbelievable coaches that I never thought you'd ever get the chance to speak to. You guys are coaching in the NBA, just reach out and say, hey, fancy a chat about some coaching, and they come back and say, yeah, cool, let's do that. So I think mentors can come, in that sort of regular contact, but even just having one day or going to a course for one day can feel like that guy is a mentor. He's changed the way I think. I'm taking that with me. A lot of authors, I feel like, have really supported me and continue to support me. And I love picking up some of those books that you mentioned and just flicking through them again to revisit some thoughts. I'd say, during my life and coaching, I'd say my mum and my dad have both been probably the best mentors in various ways. And then I've been fortunate enough to cross paths with Daniel and other great coaches, Trent Robinson, Matty Elliott, Rick Stone, Garth Brennan, Tony Ray. I've had like a lot of good mentors Neil Henry. I feel really fortunate enough to cross paths with a lot of people. Yeah, but I think learning. If you're learning, then there's a mentor in there somewhere.
Sure.
If you're chasing learning through documentaries, audio books, podcasts, books, just having conversations with people about life and about coaching, I think it's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah. It's interesting. I love sport. I've always been a part of it. I think Steve Jobs, I've always been a big fan of Apple. There's people that dream big, almost ridiculously, abstractly big, and then change the world through some crazy thought or dream. I love that idea. 447 days being in charge of Leeds now, I've had that role. Just give us a bit of an insight into how that came about, and I guess everybody's got an expectation, whether that's fulfilled your expectation in your time here, that reality is starting to manifest as that developmental sort of long-term approach to being at the Leeds Rhinos, starting to become what you hoped it'd be, and just those opening sort of 447 days.
Well, there's been a lot in that time, some big highs, and been in the grand final, and I haven't really taken too much time to reflect on that because there's sort of always stuff to look forward to. I'm not a great. I reflect daily, but I'm not great at sort of looking back on that journey. Some super memorable victories away at Catalans, and even at home against Huddersfield and Cass here, they were both big moments. But I think the whole day-to-day process of dealing with stuff that people in the stands will never know about, and dealing with that kind of stuff, good and bad stuff, to try and pull the group together to win on a weekly basis, but also having that vision for the future. And I've been fortunate enough to be around some clubs that right back from when my dad coached at Hull, and then definitely at St George, a lot of young players coming through and building the team around it, seeing the great Leeds teams through the early 2000s and being on the wrong end of some horrible defeats when I was at London to a Leeds team that were growing from within. Fortunate enough to be around Penrith for a year in 2013, where they were probably in the earlier stages of their development process, and 10 years later now they're sort of 3 or 4 years into being one of the top couple of teams. But that took a while. Yeah. But it was cool to see what they were doing. Phil Gould and Matt Cameron and Garth Brennan was a lot of the coaching of those younger players coming through. So I guess the time here has been busy. There's been a lot of highs and a few rough moments as well. But the way that the club is and the people are and the city is about the Rhinos has been great. It feels like home to us, which is probably the most important thing, that the family are happy and feel like Leeds is our home. So that's probably the biggest victory of the last year.
Yeah, I love what you're saying. It's bubbling, absolutely bubbling. It's so encouraging. Every day I go home with hairs up on the back of my neck. It really is an inspiring place to be, and I never lose sight of that either. It never wears off. I love what you said about Penrith there. Hold that thought, because I can really resonate with that. Obviously, that's NRL. This is UK, but coming up in the next few weeks, Lee played against St Helens, got the win on the weekend. They form the next 2 games for us. First St Helens away, had some absolute epics against them. This season seems to bring the best out of our team. Wounded animal in more ways than one. They've obviously lost the last 2 now against Catalan and been knocked out of the Challenge Cup by Leeds Leopards. They're going to come pretty ferociously out of there. And why do you think that the Leeds St Helens games have been epics this year?
Two good teams full of good players, and obviously there's a rivalry that goes long way back, but I don't think the modern players sort of look too far back.
Yeah.
They probably look back to the last couple of games. And we had, the middle of last year, we actually had a good tussle with St Helens for the most part of that game over there. And then we had we made them earn it in that grand final. We didn't beat ourselves. They had to play well to beat us, and then that's led into two epic games, as you said, this year. Both very different, but very similar in the closeness. I think they know who they are, and we're becoming probably on the days where we've played St Helens, we've shown who we are as well. Form won't mean anything, and who is or isn't playing won't mean much either. It'll be a big battle.
Certainly will, and I can't wait to get everybody back here. Edinley as well. Lee Leopard's next home game on a Sunday afternoon, always going off, always going mad. I've got to ask you, Lachlan Lamb and Adrian Lamb there, obviously father, son, and the way that they've recruited and the narrative, the rebranding, it's been exemplary really, and it's paid dividends. You know, they're a good side. A bit of a shock. A lot of people expected the team that's been newly promoted to just bounce straight back down. They're on for treble at the minute. You know, to be fair, they're going well. They're in a cup final. They're in second place. It's been exceptional. What's been your take of Lee this year?
Yeah, unless you're in a place, you don't fully know the successes or failures of a place. But looking from the outside, I'd say they started this process, more than a year ago, where they were getting some players into the club that they thought that would not only get them promoted, but help them stay there. I think a lot of clubs over the years that sort of looked at it are looking for that short term, let's get promoted mentality, but they've got some players in there that are a chance of being long term players now. Keeping groups together is a difficult thing with salary cap and NRL money getting thrown around for players to return that way as well. So maintaining it might be difficult, but for what it looks like from the past 18 months or so, they've built that from a while ago.
Yeah.
And they've had a really good run of injury free largely. They've had their key players playing together all the time. So that's certainly a key thing when you're trying to build something new and create your own system, which they're doing. To have the key players playing all the time is vital to build that. So they've got themselves a roll on, and you'd imagine they couldn't have hoped for a better start to the season and the position that they're in.
I like what you said there about keeping groups together. And we had a gold members evening a week or so ago with some of our key fans, our big supporters there. Talked about some of the dynasties at the Rhinos, and one of the underpinning factors for those times, that in 77, 78, a generation I was fortunate to play in, come through a system together, stayed together, and it became less about a salary cap and more about a journey. One of the things I'm really excited about with the league game is there's going to be a parade for the young kids that are moving on from scholarship to the academy, and I know you're passionate about that type of thing, seeing the development of the young people and encouraging them as well. It's all part of that long-term growth. You mentioned Penrith. You've seen that work in the NRL. Just tell us a little bit about that, how gratifying it is for you to be able to see that, and how much it feeds into your own sort of development project ideas.
Yeah, it's having players in a building that only ever want to play for one club is priceless, really. I think we understand that not every player is going to be able to stay, and other people will get opportunities, better opportunities elsewhere. But the mentality is that kids in the program get the opportunity to come through, and we want to bring as many through as we can. I've really enjoyed watching the scholarship and the academy. Most of the academy games, but the scholarship games have been the good games this year have been really enjoyable. Mark has done, and his staff have done a really good job with that crew of kids. They play the right way, they behave themselves well, they enjoy it, but they're humble enough as well. Got high hopes for a lot of those kids coming through, and they've had a real progression this year, so it'd be nice to see them take that or have that moment on the pitch and be recognised next home game. But to see them come through and get the next opportunity in academy training will be be exciting for them, yeah.
And just lastly, really quick, Justin Sangare, Nenny McDonald, Jared O'Connor, it's really good to see those older players as well committing long-term futures to the club. That settlement within the group, it just gives that certainty, doesn't it?
Yeah, those guys have played well. They've probably outplayed their contracts, so they've been rewarded and extended. And we see, the majority of our group have their best rugby ahead of them, and that's an exciting thing. And there's, as I said to the Gold members, which was a really good evening last week, I really enjoyed that format. There was probably 10 or 12, Super League players that are training in our building at the moment that haven't yet played. So there's exciting times for the club and building from the bottom up.
Outstanding. Well, some of the results this week have been outstanding. As we mentioned there, the women's team beating Wigan Warriors 16 points to 4. A little bit different from the 52-0 win a couple of weeks before, but they got the job done and they'll be playing at Wembley in the Challenge Cup final on Saturday the 12th of August. And then the action moves to the Totally Wicked Stadium on Friday as the Academy take on their counterparts from St Helens, kicking off at 5:30 p.m. before the main event, live on Sky Sports at 8 p.m. in the grand final rematch. And another epic game, I'm sure. Then on Sunday, our wheelchair team are in action at Medway Sports Park when they take on Hull FC, kick-off at 12:30 p.m. Big thanks to Rohan Smith for joining us right here on Box 2. Big thanks to you. Get behind the boys over at St Helens if you can. And if not, I look forward to seeing you here at Headingley Stadium against the Leeds Leopards. In the meantime, have a great weekend. Take care and God bless.